I want to welcome you to this course. It's very exciting to have you here with me. I'm extremely passionate about flower essences, and I hope by the end of this course you would feel exactly the same as I do. I'm an integrated natural health therapist, and as I don't like labels, it basically means I never stop studying. So I'm a naturopath, a herbalist, meditation teacher. I've done Reiki, crystal healing, and I also work with quantum radionics. In my courses, I want to bring all the puzzle pieces together for you to see the bigger picture. In all my years of studying, I've never come across a course that could link all these things together. So I hope in my courses you will find that all your little pieces of information that you find everywhere will now basically come together so that you can come up with the best solution for every single individual client. In this course, when dealing with flower essences, I want you to understand how the emotions actually tie together and what sits behind disease. Can emotions actually cause somebody to be sick? The answer is a big yes, but I'm going to explain it to you and you understand why. You need to understand how to identify the root cause of a problem, and a lot of people struggle to do that. So with the resources that I'll be providing you, I hope to make it a lot easier for you. You can either purchase flower essences, whether you're in Australia, South Africa, the UK, America, but you don't have to. I'm going to show you how to make it yourself. There are certain practices to apply as well. Especially with people from around the world with different cultures. What do you use as preservative? What would you rather avoid? We will go into detail in all these lessons. When you present your product, we want it to be professional and that people want to buy a product, so we will look at that as well. So I'm very excited to get started, and let's jump into it. I'll see you in the first lesson. Well, welcome to your first lesson, and today we're going to just discuss the link between emotions and disease. Could there really be a link? I want you to think of people that you know or have known, and think about somebody who is always very positive, very uplifted. Do they ever get sick? Then go think of somebody, maybe in your family or in your circle of friends, people that are always negative, very depressed. And who gets sick most of the time? It's always the people that are in a negative emotional state. If you need more time to think about it, make a note and go write down a few names of people that you actually know. Emotions are extremely important in our mental as well as our physical well-being. The second thing that we need to take in consideration is that emotions that get locked into our lineage can actually run for as much as 45 generations. So any unresolved issues that you may have could be coming from your great aunt or uncle who was in some type of war or who was stuck in the Industrial Revolution, people who had to suffer, people who had lack mentality. Something very interesting that I see with my clients, and I would promise you it's probably 99.9% of my clients have money blocks. Now this might sound very strange to you, but we have been taught to work extremely hard for our money. Certain people can't get a job without a degree, for instance, and all these things have been taught to us for generations. And when you worry about money, which all of us do at some stage, when you worry about money just to make ends meet, this causes stress. And stress is one of the biggest triggers of disease. So it's not that weird that when we work with flower essences, we need to address even things like our attitude towards receiving money. Other issues that can also cause serious problems for the cancers, for instance. If you are always worried and you've got built up anger and you haven't forgiven certain people in your life, when you start dealing with those emotions, you will probably find that you can start curing the cancer. I'm not saying that it's a one-stop solve everything, but it's a big part of the picture. So if you can deal with the frequency of dealing with a specific cancer, which is attacking a cell at a certain frequency, and we can lift the vibration and emotionally in the being, these cells will start vibrating higher, and that's when healing starts. So it's very important to understand all the puzzle pieces, once again, that you've got external environmental factors, the stresses, the pollution, the food that we eat, the preservatives, all of that plays a role. But we can start by working on the emotions, lifting cell vibrations in order to start healing. If you have issues that stems back generations, like for instance the lack mentality, depression, anger, feeling of not feeling good enough, low self-esteem, you can, with the help of meditation as well, you can combine all these things together for a perfect solution. For this course, obviously, we are going to be focusing on flower essences specifically, but I will be mentioning things like frequency and sound that you can also add as a complete solution for your clients. But for this course, we are going to focus specifically in detail on flower essences. Let's see you in the next lecture. So let's take a closer look at stress. I'm sure that you have also experienced that when you are under stress, whether it's about not being able to meet deadlines or you can't pay your bills on time, you will definitely remember a time in your life when you are highly stressed. When you are stressed, your adrenals are working overtime, you're putting extra stress on your body, and this makes you susceptible to getting sick. So you'll probably end up having a cold or a flu or something in that regard. Or if you suffer from arthritis, you will have flare-ups. If you have skin issues, you'll have skin issues coming up, acne coming up, for instance. So stress is definitely a big factor in determining whether you are healthy as a human being or not. In the same breath, I have to say that this also applies to animals and it also applies to babies. So if you're in a stressful situation, the animals will react aggressively or cowardly, or the babies will be crying all night. So by addressing the stress in the environment, we can then address the stress in our bodies as well. Your adrenals are extremely important. It gives you the fight or flight response. And when it's in overdrive and there's a constant release of these hormones, your body gets burnt out. That's what they call adrenal burnout. Now, you can address that by adding herbs like ashwagandha and all of that. But we are still looking at the root cause. Even if you give somebody a herb that is healthy for the adrenals, it's not taking away the response to the emotion. It's very natural to have a response. You are going to feel the stress. You need to learn to deal with the emotion and your reaction to a situation. By using flower essences, you can manipulate the vibrations and lift your vibrations, and in other words, you're going to be calming your emotions. By calming your emotions, you are in control of your reaction to a situation, which automatically brings down the stress levels. Okay, so let's move on. Okay, so let me address something very important. It's a question that I get a lot from my clients. Please believe me, I am not anti-emergency modern medicine at all. It all has its place. I do have to mention, though, that, which I love always saying, is even in emergency medicine, the foxglove flower is used, especially with paramedics, and it can save your life. But also used incorrectly, it can kill you. Okay, so if I break my arm now, by taking a flower essence, it's not going to fix the problem. I'll have to have it set properly and bandaged or put into gypsum, whatever the case may be. So there's definitely a place for modern medicine, and it is absolutely miraculous in what it can do in emergency situations. When we work with alternative healing methods, we are more in a preventative and in an early step-in stage. This is not meant for dealing with an emergency. It has, however, got its benefit, especially with anxiety and panic attacks and things like that. So if you have, for instance, you have a client suffering from that, I always tell them, carry that little mix in your handbag, and you can take it any time of the day. As soon as you feel that panic attack coming on, take a drop, and it will immediately lift the vibration. But when it comes to serious things like being in a motor car accident or breaking a bone, or displacing a joint, this is not going to be the answer for that. We are strictly working with the emotional part, the mental part of the human body, and the role that it plays in general health. So I hope that clears that up. I'm definitely not anti anything else. We are just looking at ways to live a better life in general, feeling better, living in the moment, enjoying everything, getting rid of the stress. And by living in the moment in the best way possible will ensure that you have the best life possible. So the next thing that we are going to be looking at is if the emotions truly have a validity in the physical symptoms, what would some of these symptoms actually be? When we look at skin conditions, whether it's eczema, acne, dryness, over oil production of the skin. Anything that happens in the skin is a reflection of something deep inside the body that needs attention, and it displays your body speaks to you in a sense. Okay, so when it needs to tell you something needs attention, it will show you, listen, I'm stressing, I've got a lot of pimples all of a sudden, which means you need to look at your stress levels and your adrenals. Over the years, what I've done is I have correlated the evidence. What are the physical complaints and what's the emotional state of the client? And by linking those together, there's a lot of things that correlate, and we can see, okay, if, for instance, arthritis is a problem or urinary tract infections are a problem, these are usually the emotions that need to be dealt with. That is absolutely fantastic for anybody to know, but how would you know that from the word go? And the answer is quite simply, you won't, not without seeing it in practice. So what I've done is I have made a document with the most basic complaints, the more difficult ones, cancers and lung issues, etc., and what the emotions are that could be treated. So that will be in the documentation that you can print out for yourself. And then we're ready to move on to the next section. Okay, so now we're ready to look at the history and the scientific facts behind what we are claiming could actually be a great modality for healing. And who knew it better than the Chinese? The Chinese, the Ayurvedic and the Indians, even the Egyptians, all ancient technologies show us that they knew about frequency. They knew about the power of frequency healing, whether it was moving things or whether it was affecting the body and actually creating healing. In the next lectures, I want you to look at a bit of the history. It might be a bit long, but it's very important to understand the workings of Dr. Emoto as well as Dr. Bach, because they were crucial in this whole movement. When somebody asks you for evidence, you have to be able to stick up for it and say, okay, well, refer to this, and this is why I'm saying it works. I didn't just pull it out of the air. There is scientific evidence behind it. So enjoy the next few videos. And yes, I know everybody doesn't like history, but it is really important that you understand where it comes from. As an integrated natural health healer, I help my clients to attain true health on a physical and emotional level. If a cell is diseased, it vibrates much lower than what it should in comparison to a healthy cell. How can we lift the vibrations in our own bodies? There are quite a few techniques that I use, and I will list some of them for you to follow. Let me introduce you to Dr. Masaru Emoto. He was a Japanese scientist who studied the molecular structure of water. He wanted to know whether human thoughts and emotions had an effect on water, and his research revealed that all emotions and music had different results on the molecules of the water. Emoto said that water was a blueprint for our reality, and that emotional energies and vibrations could change its physical structure. He found that water exposed to positive speech and thoughts created visually pleasing ice crystals, and that negative intentions yielded ugly ice formations. As human beings, we consist of over 70% water. So obviously, if water has memory, it will directly affect the state of our cells and thus our health. If you understand this concept, then you will understand why flower essences can be so powerful. Okay, so now that you have seen that video, we need to understand that water retains memory. We also know that cells vibrate and disease cells vibrate lower than healthy cells. So keeping all of that in mind, how are we going to view the healing? When you have a client and they come to you with physical ailments, automatically you're going to ask them the emotional side as well. What are they experiencing? By marrying these two and putting them together, we can get a better idea of how to heal the human body on a physical level, an emotional level, as well as a spiritual level. It's very important to have a holistic approach to the human body. For too long, modern medicine will only focus on the symptom. If I have a blister, I will put something on it and it will heal the blister, but it will not heal where it's actually coming from, where there's maybe acidity problem in your body. It's not dealing with a problem, it's only putting a plaster on the problem so the symptom disappears. Same with a headache. If you get constant headaches, if you take a pain tablet, what does it do? It blocks the neurons in your brain and it actually stops the communication, the firing in between the neurons. It stops that communication. Is that a good thing? Definitely not. You might not feel the pain anymore. But what happens if you have a dog with a broken leg, for instance, and you give the dog a pain pill and the dog can't feel the pain? So he's going to be running around the garden and hurting himself even more instead of nursing the broken leg. Putting a plaster on the problem is definitely not the answer. When we deal with entities, animals, humans, even plants, we need to look at it holistically. That means there will be environmental factors. We won't always have control over the environmental factors, although we can try and control what we can as much as we can. But unfortunately, if you have to drive to work every day in heavy traffic, you're still going to be sitting there with levels of stress, pollution in the air, and there's not much you can do about that. So once again, what we are doing is we are enabling the client to deal with the emotions and their reactions to situations in the best way possible. I hope that is starting to make this puzzle a bit clearer. And let's move on to the next one. Okay, so let's look at what exactly is a flower essence. A flower essence is the energy of a plant where the energy is most concentrated, which is in the flower part of the plant, because all the reproductive organs are there. So it makes sense that most of the plant's energy would be focused in that area. Next thing is we need to harness the energy of the specific flower into something that we as humans and animals and plants can actually use. Best way to do that is to trap it into water. So we need to get the energy into the water so that we as humans can start using it. But let's look into what Dr. Bach has to say and where the scientific evidence comes in. A long time before Dr. Emoto's research, during the 1930s, we find Dr. Edward Bach. Dr. Bach was convinced that an individual's emotional well-being was the key to overall health, and I fully agree. He was a well-known London doctor, physician, surgeon, bacteriologist, homeopath, and medical researcher. Dr. Bach believed that illness was caused by the disharmony between body and mind, and that resulting negative energy led to physical disease. From this standpoint, Dr. Bach believed that illness could have multiple causes connected with the state of mind of the patient. But what are flower essences? Flower essences are an infusion containing a selected flower's vibrational imprint. They have no scent and are used for emotional, spiritual, and mental healing and balance. The flower essence is dropped onto the tongue or mixed with water and drank. Note that these remedies don't cause any biochemical changes in the body, so they are 100% safe to use, literally, by anyone, even a newborn baby. Flower essence are completely different to essential oils. Please take note, it's not the same thing at all. Any flower can be used, so no matter where in the world you find yourself, if you're from South Africa or even Australia, you can use the local flowers with similar energetic properties as the original 38 Bach flower remedies. When I work with my clients, I go in depth to determine what the emotional blockages are, and I custom blend flower essences to assist and speed up the healing process. Okay, so flower essences, as you can see, is very, very useful. It really has its place, even if it comes from a dandelion or a thistle. I view flowers completely differently to most people, and I see weeds in a completely different light. Being a herbalist as well, I understand that every single flower on this planet has some kind of use. Granted, whether it's going to save you or whether it's going to kill you, that's beyond the point, but every single plant and flower has its place. Flowers are found all over the world. Australia would have a different environment and different flowers to the environment in the UK, for instance. The temperatures are completely different, so it makes sense that you'll have different types of flowers growing in different regions. So whether you are in Australia, you will use your Australian bush essences. In South Africa, work with the flowers around you. Use the South African flower essences if you can't get hold of an essence yourself. All over the world, no matter where you are not restricted to only using the few Bach remedies that are available internationally. You can if you want to. I just find that it limits me. When I become extremely specific, especially when working with children, and you really want to fine-tune the remedy to have the biggest impact, I just found that just working with the Bach remedies wasn't enough for me, and that's when I started expanding. The more tools that you have in your toolkit, the better protocol you can work out for your clients, and you'll have better results all around. So go look, and even if it's on Google, just go look in your area, whether you're in India or China, Korea, wherever in the world you find yourself. Go find out what is the availability of flower essences in your area to be able to order online, just in case you might not have access to a specific one that a client needs. Orientate yourself towards that, because as we move forward, you are going to be working with your chosen set of flower essences. Okay, so we'll see you in the next lecture. So in this lecture, we're going to discuss how to actually use flower essences. Because it's a frequency medicine, for lack of a better word, it doesn't make any biochemical changes in your body. What that simply means is it has no effect physically on your body. It does raise the vibration, however. To understand about this is that it is completely safe to use for anybody. If they are currently on medications for high blood pressure, arthritic pain, ADHD, it doesn't matter what the situation is, it will not have an effect on that medication. To put it another way, when I work with clients and they are on allopathic medications, which is your over-the-counter medications or prescription drugs, You can't give any herb because they actually contradict each other. They do not work together. So it's a lot more difficult working with the herbs with somebody who's already on medication. With flower essences, you don't have to worry about this. You really don't have to worry about this because it has no biochemical effect on the physical body. We are working with energy and we are working with frequencies, and we are also working on the emotional and spiritual body. Let's look at a dosage bottle that you've prepared for a client. How do you advise the client to take it? Okay, so there are a few options. Simply take the dropper, 1 drop under the tongue, immediately absorbed and assimilated. Very easy. Some people might feel uncomfortable in a public space, for instance, taking the drop. They can very simply just drop it onto their skin. It will have exactly the same effect. The other thing that I also advise my clients, if you have a desk job or you always behind your computer, take a glass of water, put 2 or 3 drops in the glass of water, and as you're working through the day, just simply sip on the water. Works like a bomb. How many times a day can you take it? And the answer is indefinitely. You cannot overdose because it does not have a biochemical effect on the body. It's only frequency, so you can take it as often as you like. As previously mentioned, when a client suffers from anxiety or panic attacks, and I say keep that bottle in your handbag or on you all the time, and when you feel that feeling coming on, immediately use it in any of the ways that I described now, and it will have an immediate effect. If you need to take it 20 times a day, do that. There might be different situations. I'm going to give you a good example. If somebody is struggling with public speaking, for instance, by the way, I'm one of them, or I used to be, and I've made myself a mix, and I called it video and talking mix, and this is the drop that I will take every time before I do recording. It takes away all my anxieties. It deals with all the issues that I know I have. So the correct flowers are put into this mix. I wonder if you can guess what's in here. As we go on and you start formulating blends, I would love for you to create your own public speaking blend. The other thing I need to mention is that once an issue is resolved, it's resolved forever. I just want to give you an example. When I was going through my healing process, one of the essences I was taking was the oak essence. The oak essence deals with deep-rooted issues that you might not even be aware of, which means we are going back generations as well. One thing that I noticed was that my fear of heights disappeared. It simply disappeared. To give you a short story about that, when I hang up my herbs to dry, it's on these scaffoldings and very high, and I simply cannot hang it up and I cannot retrieve it once it's dried, so I always ask my husband to do it for me. And that day he was extremely busy and I was getting impatient. And the next thing I knew, I was right on top of the scaffolding without a single fear in my body. My fear of heights was so bad that I couldn't even stand on a chair or a table. And up to today, my fear of heights is simply gone. So that's great news. So once you have tackled that problem, you know that it has been solved. You can move on to the next. Something else I just want to mention, when you start working with clients, tackle the main ones first. Once you see an improvement there, you can go back and review the emotions and then go tackle some of the ones that are not that obvious. Okay, so that's how we will be working through the clients with the follow-ups, etc. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's just move on to the next lecture for now. Okay, so now you understand that you get all these different flower essences and they all have a very specific meaning and a job to do. But we are very complex beings and we don't just have one emotion. Let me give an example of, let's call her Susan. She's 43 years old. She's going through a divorce. She will just burst out in tears for no reason. She's having problems with her skin. She's getting repeated urinary tract infections. So there's a lot of things going on. She's busy going through a divorce, she's having problems at work, she's worrying because she's being demoted. So you can understand it's a very complex being that we're working with. We can't just give her one flower essence and think that she's going to get better, because she's not. We have to look at all of them. So that's the importance of being able to put all these elements together and to create the perfect blend. So there are two ways that you can go about doing this. You can choose to create generic blends, for example, one for stress, one to be able to sleep better at night, public speaking blend. You understand what I'm saying. Anybody off the street can buy that generic blend. Or you can choose to do a personalized blend, and that's how I like to work, because I get very specific, as I said. So when I work with a client, I take all these things into consideration, the physical side, the emotional side, and I put them together, and I pick my flowers very carefully, usually by elimination. And don't worry, you don't have to know all of them off by heart. After all these years, I still go through my books and my notes, and I make 100% sure that I'm choosing the correct flower. It's usually by a process of elimination. I would say, okay, let's go through them. Yes, that's a possibility, that's a possibility. And as I go through all of them, there are hundreds of flowers, by the way. So nobody's going to expect you to remember all of them. Okay, so go and check and make sure that you're creating the right blend and choosing the right flowers. And then, as a rule, no more than 5 flowers per blend. Otherwise, it just gets too much. So we want a maximum of 5 energies per blend. As I mentioned previously, deal with the most obvious ones first. Once we've dealt with that, we can always move on to a new blend to deal with the smaller issues that might still be lingering around. Okay, so for Susan, we are going to look at something that is with a divorce. Okay, from the top of my head, I know that oak is a fantastic essence if you're going through major things like immigration or divorce. Okay. Let's say she also lost her grandfather recently. So there's an issue of grief. So we will look at something like a bleeding heart to add to that. So you understand where I'm getting at. All these flowers then will become the perfect blend for Susan. Or if you just want to do generics, that's fine. The way that you want to run your business or how you want to offer this is entirely up to you. You might not have time, like I do, to have one-on-ones with my clients to do personalized blends, or you might bring it in as an extra in your practice. It's entirely up to you. Okay, I'm just explaining how I work and how I prefer, and how I've seen major improvements in every single client that I've worked with. I want to give you a good example as well. I work very closely with an educational psychologist, and I only work online. I never see my clients, by the way. And she refers the parents of the children that are having problems at school, whether it's learning disabilities, whether it's just struggling during exam time, and instead of sending them to a psychiatrist who's going to put them on heavy psych meds, I'm sure you all understand how bad that can be. Once a child goes onto ADHD medication, for instance, it's quite a nightmare. It kills their creativity, it blocks a lot of things, it doesn't let them be themselves. I have 100% helped all these kids improve their exams, their marks, their concentration levels. It's absolutely fantastic, and they've never needed an allopathic medication ever. Whenever an exam comes up, the client will contact me again and say, please, Jonathan is going to start his exams. He asked me for these drops because it worked so beautifully for him. So it really is amazing, especially once you start seeing the results. So let's get into the nitty-gritty of how are we actually physically going to make these remedies. And I'll see you in the next session. Now we're going to look at how to actually choose your flowers and how to harvest them and start making your flower essences. Many people are of the opinion that it doesn't matter what time of the month or where the moon is in a cycle. But because I'm very in tune with frequencies and with the way I do my business, I find it extremely important that, first of all, your mindset and intention is 100% correct when you connect with the flowers and you harvest the essence. And also when the energies on the planet are at its strongest, which happens to be around full moon. I would never attempt to make a flower essence around the new moon, for instance, because the energies are simply too low. So I want to use everything in my power to make the most potent flower essence that I can. So I definitely go on the moon cycles. Just to remember that there are also two schools of thought here. You can either use the sun's energy to harness, or you can use the moon's energy to harvest. Me personally, I work with the sun's energy. So when I know it is a full moon and it's a sunny day, I go out, I harvest my flowers, and that definitely gives me the best results. In the resources section, there is a step-by-step guide as to how to go about actually harvesting the flowers, what water to use, how long it should be in the sun or the moonshine, depending on your preference. Please print it out, go through it. Before moving on to the next section, it's quite important that you understand all the steps necessary. If it so happens that you're doing this lesson when it's almost full moon or full moon, please go outside, choose any flower. It doesn't matter what flower at this stage. Just go sit with it, meditate if you want, connect with it, ask for its permission to be used as a healing remedy, harvest it, put it in the sunlight or in the moonlight, whatever your preference might be. Please go do that practice first before we move on to the next sections. In the next sections, we are going to look more at the preservatives, labeling, presenting your product and all of that. So please go do that, and then I'll see you in the next session. And welcome back. If you did that practice, you have just made your first mother essence. The mother essence is the main bottle that you are going to be using to be making dosage bottles. Dosage bottles are the ones that will be the blends that you actually send out to your clients. So you are going to keep this mother essence well labeled and all of that for future use, and it can last indefinitely. So there's no expiration date on these things. I just want to recap that the mother essence is the one that you have now made. It is a high concentration of the flower's energy trapped into the water. Less is more. Same as homeopathy, we are going to be diluting the mother essence to make lighter dosage bottles for the clients. And this is also where you're going to be adding your blends. So you'll have your different mother bottles, the mother essences, whether it's impatience, rose, agapanthus, whatever ones you've got now. And now we're going to make the dosage bottle. So going back to the document that you printed out, just go recap on that area. If you want to start experimenting with a few, you can do so, you're welcome. But understand the two principles of the mother essence and the dosage bottle that would be going to the client. So let's look at ways that we are going to be preserving your mother essence and also your dosage bottles. But the most important one is to keep your mother essence as fresh as possible so that it doesn't go rancid. If pure water stands for too long, you will start smelling it. So we need to do some type of preservation, which is obviously 100% natural and also safe for your clients to use. Originally, the Bach remedies are all preserved with brandy, which is an alcohol. Now, in my experience, we have a lot of diversity and cultures in South Africa, and I cannot use an alcohol for all my clients. So I looked at alternatives, and the best one that I use is apple cider vinegar. So a tiny drop of apple cider vinegar instead of the brandy is a fantastic thing for anybody who has a religious reason not to be taking alcohol, or even children and babies and pets that you don't want to have them to consume alcohol. So as a rule for myself, I only use apple cider vinegar, but that's up to you completely. Depends on who your target market is and who you will be helping. But to be on the safe side, just the same as when I use veggie caps for all my herbal remedies, I cater to everybody, whether you're vegan or whatever religion you are. I will definitely be able to help you. So just a quick hint on the preservatives to use. I think it will help everybody worldwide. Now you started to collect your essences, and you'll understand the importance of labeling them correctly. If you end up with me, you're going to have shelves and shelves and shelves filled with different mother essences. It's essential that it doesn't have to be a fancy label, just write, even if it's on a piece of packing tape, just write the name of the flower as well as the date that you harvested the energies. This will really make your life so much easier going forward. And like I said, there's over 300 simply South African flower essences that I work with. So it's absolutely impossible to remember where you put a certain essence. So make sure that your labeling is correct, because this will make your life easier. I want to go through the process of making your dosage bottles a little bit more specifically. So I will have my mother essence, and I will have my dosage bottle that I'm going to make for instance, a client. If you're making a generic one, obviously you'll have a few bottles that you're going to be filled. So when you fill them, you put in your preservative, whether it's the brandy or the little bit of ACV. Be careful with that, because it can be very strong, so use very, very little in your dosage bottles. And then you will take the drop, you will fill it up with your distilled water, all your bottles, your dosage bottles, and then you will use your mother essence and put in 1 drop each of the essence. If you're making a blend, you're going to be taking the next flower, same thing, 1 drop per bottle. And so you'll carry on until you get to a maximum of 5. Remember, you don't always have to put 5 in. If 3 or 4 flowers or even 2 flowers are sufficient for the client's needs, that's perfect. If you're making a generic one, same thing applies. Just never more than 5 in 1 bottle. You will then seal your bottles perfectly. Your dosage bottles are ready, and you can put away your mother essences for the next time. Once you've sealed your dosage bottles, just give it a good shake so that it distributes the energies equally, and then you're going to put on your label that will sell your product. We will look into the professional presentation at a later stage. At this stage, it's important that you understand where the mother essence comes in and how to actually make your dosage bottles. If you're ever in doubt, please refer back to the document that you printed out. Following up with your client is very important. You need to keep track of how they are dealing with it, and if you actually pinpointed the underlying emotions correctly. It's very easy to adjust. Nobody's going to get it right 100% all the time. So don't be afraid to ask, and don't be afraid to adjust. Let's take Susan for example as well. 2 weeks time, I follow up with Susan, and she reports back and she says, oh, it's so much easier. She's cruising through this divorce now. She's actually feeling excited about her new future. She doesn't burst out in tears anymore, and her skin actually is starting to looking better. However, she's noticed that she's having nightmares. So by knowing that, we know that it's a smaller issue, but it is surfacing now. Once the main issues have been sorted out, we can now formulate a new blend for her to deal with the smaller issues going forward. Obviously, if you are selling a generic thing and it's just people off the streets or on the internet buying it, you won't be able to do the follow-ups. So use this to your discretion and how you will be practicing going forward. In this section, I want to share some documents with you that will make the admin process easier for you, also pinpointing the underlying emotions. So in this section, in the resources, please find the framework for the questions I ask my clients to ascertain their physical health. Print that out for you. You can use it word by word, you can adapt it as you like, but it's a great guideline to understand the bigger picture of health. You'll see that I ask questions like weight, environment that they eat in. All of those have effects as well. Are they on any current medications? If there aren't any current medications, that's very important to take note of, because a lot of the side effects may be caused by those medications as well. A good example is somebody who is on antidepressants, for instance. they might actually experience a lot of depression, ironically enough, and sleeplessness or lack of appetite. So just be mindful. If you're not sure what the medication is, you don't need to be an MD. You can just Google the side effects of certain medications, and you can also put two and two together. Is it actually the medication causing some of these symptoms or not? So that's just a little extra that will help you going forward and understanding the bigger picture. Well, as you know by now, knowing the physical problems that they're experiencing and the diseases that they're having, or whatever the physical side of it is not really what we want to know. It's going to guide us into the emotional side. So I developed an emotional questionnaire as well. This will be a lot more specific into how they are feeling. It's very difficult for a client if they're not in tune with what they're really feeling. It's so normal to feel sad. It's so normal to feel anxious. It's so normal to be worried that they don't really know how to pinpoint it. So the questionnaire makes it a lot easier for them to fill in from a scale from 1 to 5 the frequency of certain emotions listed in this questionnaire and how severe it is. And that will give you a clear indication. Once you get this questionnaire back, be aware of all the ones that are number 5s. In other words, the highest emotions, the most frequent ones. Go look at those ones. You can ignore the 1s and the 2s for now. We want to focus on the main problems for now until we do a review, and then we can see how that has changed. I always keep it in a file, and I like to compare as well to see where we have made improvements. If I can see that there's a general theme that's not being sorted out, I will definitely be adjusting the flowers that I use. But you will probably see in the next 2 weeks that your client's questionnaire will look completely different to what it looked the first time. So please print that out. It's extremely valuable. I just want to touch again on the different types of flowers that you might have access to in the area that you stay in, wherever in the world you are. In South Africa, the South African Flower Essence Association actually has a little book with all their listed flowers with the emotions that they actually treat. You can call me old school if you want to. I like having a physical book to actually go through and double check. I also make notes in my file, like you'll see in the first document that you printed out with the physical ailments where you've got space to make notes. I make a lot of notes, and I have a big book where every time I harbor something, I will write the emotions there as well. So for future reference, I have something to go back to and double check. But if they don't have a book available, don't sweat. Everything is available online. If you do any search on the computer, on the internet, you will be able to find a specific flower. For instance, the one that I could never find was the cannabis flower, which is an amazing, amazing antidepressant to be using in certain blends. The one specifically that I could never find was the cannabis flower. So make a note of that, put it in your journal or in your book that you have for all your flower essences. If you have books available, fantastic, keep them all together. You are going to be referencing them for the rest of your life. I promise you that. There's no way that you will remember every single thing. And once you start making your blends, you want to be as specific as possible to that person's situation. You will find that a lot of the flowers around the world might actually overlap. If you have a certain flower in Australia and you're in South Africa, or you see something in a Bach remedy, for instance, but you want to recreate it, there will be other flowers with very similar properties. So don't be scared to experiment and go explore and discover the magic that all these flowers have for you. As an added extra, I just wanted to give you one of my first books I ever wrote, in a PDF format that you can download. It's actually based on the flowers that I used in the Healing Garden book that I wrote. So it corresponds with those flowers. But I'm sure as your first guide, and it's completely free, print it out, keep it in your file, and I'm sure you will be using some of those flowers sometime on your journey. So enjoy that. That's on me to you. You are doing very well. We are just having to touch on a few other aspects, for instance, the safety aspect. We already discussed which is the safest preservative to use, and in my Personal opinion, apple cider vinegar is the way to go. Very safe. We also said that it doesn't make any biochemical change in the body, so it's safe to use with any other medications that your client may be on. Just a few other safety aspects that I want to mention. You will always be using a glass bottle. Please don't use plastics, even if it's BPA free or anything like that. It will actually give a smell to it as well in the long run, and it's really not that healthy at all. So stick to glass and seal them properly, disinfect the bottles properly before you use them. Always use pure water, don't use infected or dirty water or tap water. It always has to be distilled or purified water. I also want to mention it is so safe and absolutely anybody can use it, whether it's a newborn baby that's going through a terrible birth. Let's say, for instance, it's a very difficult birth. You can immediately, if you happen to be a midwife, you can have those drops with you and actually put it on the baby's forehead, and it will calm them down. So even with a newborn baby, maybe you've experiencing a client with Alzheimer's, very elderly, and it's perfectly safe. If you are having, let's say for instance you moved house and you moved all your pot plants and your plants are really not doing very well in the new environment, it's the shock of the movement and the environmental change. You can even use your flower essences on them. Let your imagination go wild. The sky is literally the limit with flower essences. It is so safe, it is so gentle, but so amazingly effective. I also have to mention that using frequency energy and lifting the vibrations, it might trigger a detox reaction in your client. Depending on how deep-rooted this issue is, some people never experience the detox symptoms and some do. Just be aware that this might trigger something in your client. Also make your clients aware that this might happen. It's usually absolutely nothing serious. It might be a little bit of an upset stomach. It's just the body's way of detoxing. They might experience light headaches. As long as you just know about this and also just inform your clients so they don't think, oh, something's really wrong and I don't feel well now. Just know that it is the body's way of detoxing, and some people may experience nothing at all. Some people might experience slight detoxing, and you might find the odd one here and there that might be going through a lot of detoxing. So just be mindful of that and to keep your clients informed at all times. So finally, we are ready to present our remedies to our clients, and it's of utmost importance to be professional about it. Nobody wants to use some concoction made by somebody that just looks dodgy. So think about your presentation, think about your image. If you already have a holistic center or practice, you probably already have a logo. If you have to go simplify it, you can go do that too. I had to do that with Alive Holistic for my skincare range, for instance. So go think about how you want to present the bottles. What is the image that you want to portray? Please don't try and print the labels by yourself unless you have a fantastic printing setup in the business, in your family business or whatever. But please go do have it printed professionally. The first image is really important and your client will feel special and looked after. If you do personalized bottles, there's nothing wrong with printing your own labels. You will have a date on there, the name of the client, and specify, according to law, you have to say what's in it, even though it doesn't make a biochemical difference, for your reference as well, and for the client's reference, to know exactly what flowers you used in that specific mix. That's very useful for when you do a follow-up and you want to adjust the blend. You can go back and exactly see what you used originally and what is working and what needs some adjustment. As we've mentioned before, you will always be using glass bottles. Firstly, because it's healthier and it's more professional than anything plastic, by the way. So when you choose your bottles, what size do you actually look at? Well, that will depend on your application method. I'm going to give you an example. Mostly I use 10 or 20 milliliter bottles as the dosage bottles. That's my go-to. But when I do my success challenge, which is a 21-day period where the clients are constantly taking their drops, I like to give them a 30 ml bottle, and they can carry on with it even after the 21-day challenge has completed. So that's completely up to you, but it will never be bigger than a 30 ml. So you're going to have 10 ml, 20 ml, and in some cases 30 ml, depending on how you want to use it. This last section on photos is quite ironic because I've got a great love for taking photos. My husband happens to be a professional photographer. But it's really crucial that when you put your product out in any advertising or marketing form, whether it's online or in a brochure, that your photos are high quality. Fortunately, I know that the phones these days can take amazing photos, but do yourself a favor and just go have a look at how to do specifically product photography. I will put a link in the resources, which is quite a good guide, but go through that so you understand the importance of lighting, how to position things, how to make it appealing to the client. If you fail on photos, your first impression for selling your product has failed completely and dismally. So please go read that section. It's not a must, but it's really highly recommended as the final presentation for your product. It's essential that you create a professional image, and photos are absolutely amazing at doing that. So for extra fun, please go read that link and it will definitely benefit you. You are at the end of this course, and now all that you need to do is to do the final test. I want you to use all the printed material, all the notes that you've made, even online searches to complete this test. Remember, nobody will ever, no matter if they've been doing this for 60 years, will remember every single flower. So always reference back to the material and your notes. It's an open book exam. Go think about it clearly. I also added different flowers from different regions. So I know that you've already decided on what set of flowers you're going to be using, but to open your mind and to expand and know where you can go to, I have included all of them. So take your time, do the research properly. It's a monkey puzzle, it's not difficult, but choose your blends correctly and understand what flower can start doing what. It's a great exercise to do. And as I said, take your time, please complete it, and then you are ready to run this business. Well, congratulations, you're at the end of your course, and I truly, truly hope that you found some great value and some guidance going forward and bring this into your own practice. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask. And then I want to ask you, just as a one last thing, what do you think I put into my video and talking mix? What flowers would you create for a public speaking generalized flower essence? I'd love to see your feedback. Let's see if you're learning and how creative you can be. It's very important to always keep an open mind, always be open to new things, learn something new every single day, like my grandfather said, and your day will not be wasted. I look forward to seeing you back with some of my future courses coming up, and I really hope that you make a huge success. I really appreciate that you took the time to listen to me and to expand your horizons. Good luck for the future.